Hello everyone, this is part 10 of What If Naruto Got Lost During His Training TS, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. It had already been 4 months since Ikkoku had joined the group. He got along splendidly well with Jiraiya. He was a writer as well, having a series of his own, but the stories he wrote about were suspense and thriller type things. He got a kick out of all the adventures that the group had, as well as some of the ones that he was party to. He kind of had an inkling of an idea as to how the men got into the messes that they did, the major ones that is. But he dared not voice such things lest they get into much more trouble than they would be able to handle. That nut job of a Kami could be real sadistic at times. The 3 original men benefited a lot from Ikkoku's presence. Some of the situations that Haru got them in needed a longer arm to help them out, and Ikkoku's Polax really helped with that. Kiyomi still didn't get pulled into these adventures. There must have really been a divine force that protected her from anything that could really hurt her. That is not to say that she couldn't get hurt or get into a bind, it's just that she never got pulled into the places that the men found themselves in. She may have been chased by dogs or cats, but not by the molten monsters, saber-toothed cats, or rampaging rhinos that the men kept having to run away from. But the first adventure that Ikkoku had experienced while traveling with the group was not caused by Haru, but by something that he did sometime in a past life, back when his horn was a lot longer than it was in this life. 2 weeks after leaving Kuma no Kuni, the party found themselves walking on the edges of Kase no Kuni when suddenly a sandstorm came out of nowhere and hit them. The men were separated from Kiyomi, whom they would later find in Sunagakure no Sato. The men were able to find a cave in which they were able to take shelter in. Noticing that Kiyomi was not among them, Jiraiya and Mikio glared at Haru. "I swear," Haru said, "I didn't do nothing this time." "Well, you must have done something. The voice isn't whispering to me anymore. If not done something, you must have wanted something to happen. Swear, cross me heart and hope to fly. I don't wanna get lost in a desert." "You guys," Ikkoku said, "why are you blaming Haru for the sandstorm?" "Simple, remember all those dangerous situations we found ourselves in?" Mikio asked. "Yeah, well, Haru somehow got us into those situations," Jiraiya added. "Oh, but I swear it wasn't me this time." The 4 men decided that it would be of no use to argue about whose fault it was and just walked deeper into the cave. Jiraiya noticed that they seemed to find themselves trapped in caves a lot. "We seem to find ourselves in caves a lot. Don't remind me, that volcano thing was a pain in the posterior," Mikio stated. The sandstorm outside refused to let up, so the quartet moved further into the cave. After a couple minutes of forced exploration due to boredom, the group of 4 found themselves in a chamber, with the only other hole in it being a hole in the ground. Haru was hesitant to look into the hole, so the 3 originals decided to use this opportunity as some sort of initiation for Ikkoku. Once Ikkoku looked over the edge and into the hole, he wished he hadn't, for down in the darkness was a pair of eerie yellow eyes staring at him. Anger was burning within them. Once he backed away, torrents of water started to rush into the chamber, coming out of the 2 only entrances and exits into and out of the chamber. With so much water coming in, the Jiraiya and Mikio began forming plans and were discussing the best way to get out of the cave without having to expend so much energy. Haru sealed away his clothes except for a pair of pants, while Ikkoku strapped his Polax to his back and prepared to swim. Not being with the group for so long, Ikkoku did not expect anything other than water to be their problem. But as soon as they were submerged underwater, Ikkoku knew that the pair of eyes he saw were not just figments of his imagination. The eyes belonged to Asuryu, a water dragon, one of 5 that were swimming in the water and making their way towards him, so while holding his breath he sped towards the direction of the other 3 men. Upon seeing the dragons that were swimming after Ikkoku, Jiraiya grabbed the other Sennin, pumped chakra to his legs and swung for it with Mikio and Haru following the pair into the hole with the 5 dragons hot on their heels. The hole in the middle of the chamber was a long and winding one, and somehow the quartet was able to hold their breaths until they found an underground space in which they could pop out of the water and breath. The space was in fact a cave, with the walls made purely out of diamonds. Drilling upwards was not a good idea as the drilling might not work, and might also cause a cave-in. So the quartet had to rest a while, catch their breaths and prepare for battle. The dragons on the other hand failed to notice the air space, so they continued onwards deeper and further into the cave. Once the 4 men had rested up they dove into the water and began their journey back to the cave entrance in which they first entered the cave in search of shelter. But once they hit the water, like moths to a flame, the dragons just appeared there ready and waiting for Ikaku. These overgrown lizards were mad, hungry, and mad. The 4 men got ready for battle, a battle of the underwater kind. 4 on 5 were great odds for the dragons. So long as the water wasn't treated to electricity, the dragons had the upper hand. No one can be stupid enough to send out electricity to fry everyone in the water. It was a stalemate, not a single one moved as they had a staring contest, dragons and humans. But of course someone had to break away and officially start the battle. While Jiraiya was secretly preparing to launch some underwater wind bullets with the air he still had in his lungs being amplified with his chakra, Mikio was preparing to send some water dragons of his own at the 5 water dragons, Ikaku was coating his poleaxe with magic for sharpness, and some wind chakra for more slicing ability. Haru launched his attack. From all 5 of his fingers chakra strings shot out, 2 strings attached themselves to each dragon, followed by a lightning bolt's worth of power. This action sent the dragons writhing in agony. But the dragons quickly overcame or ignored the pain and were about to send out some tsunami in strength attacks, when they were pelted by pockets of air, ice dragon missiles since Mikio cooled the water he was using too much, and each of the dragons lost 1 horn thanks to the poleaxe. The attacks pushed back the dragons. While the dragons were recovering, the 4 humans swam as fast as they could towards the entrance of the cave hoping to escape the water prison that they had found themselves in. When they finally got out of the water, all 3 men slammed their palms on the water's surface and sent volt upon volt of electricity. There were so many supercharged and superheated electrons in the water that sparks could be seen dancing on the surface. After that they bolted into the still raging sandstorm. Some minutes of trudging through gale force winds that sent sand slashing at their forms, the 4 men were able to break through the storm and came out in the middle of a ravine, smooth walls on either side of the ravine or canyon they were in. So they decided to rest for a bit, catch their breath, and get back some of their lost chakra. After a few minutes of waiting, Mikio started to feel cold, followed by the 2 senins. Then the 3 men saw Haru who had run off come running towards them. He was being followed by a snow and hail storm. Snow and hail were the last things that the group expected to find in the middle of a desert. But there it was, a storm of ice was fast approaching them. So they ran after Haru who had already sped away from the oncoming storm. Not a minute had passed when they 3 men saw Haru running back towards the storm. They briefly wondered why he was running back. In the direction that they were running there were 5 dragons spitting torrents of water out of their mouths. The tsunami of water was swiftly heading their way, so they turned around and ran. A few meters later the 4 men found themselves between a rock and a hard place. They were in between the snowstorm and the tsunami. Behind both unnatural disasters were 5 dragons. Each group looking like they wanted to have Sennin for dinner, or so Ikaku thought. Contrary to what Ikaku thought, the dragons did not want Sennin for dinner, they just wanted a certain Sennin's soul to go through the process of reincarnation again, this time maybe into a worm or something. As the water and the ice closed in, Mikio and Jiraiya slammed their palms on the ground. A giant cloud of smoke later and the 4 men were standing on the heads of 2 boss summons. Jump! Jiraiya and Mikio shouted at their summons. After the summons landed on the right side of the canyon, the water and ice froze in the canyon, creating a frozen lake which did not fill the entire canyon, just a part of it. The dragons flew or climbed up onto the left side of the canyon facing the 2 summons and the 4 men. Before charging off into battle to face 10 dragons, 5 of ice and 5 of water, the Gamabunta wanted to know how they got 10 dragons after their hides. Ikaku Sennin as I live and breathe. So it's round 2, this time with the great-grandsons of Ryo Wo. Mukadetashu, the boss of the centipede contract, said. Jiraiya, I'll fight with you this time, Ryo Wo. Ha ha, I've wanted to fight his spawns for ages. Gamabunta said. Realization hit Jiraiya like a ton of bricks, so he bonked Ikaku on his head. You are that Ikaku Sennin. If we here I'm king you again. Jiraiya shouted at Ikaku an inch away from his ear. Before anything else could be said, a literal thunderstorm appeared overhead. Thunder and lightning, hail, snowballs, fireballs, rain, ice spears, ice balls, and the like were falling or flung in the general direction of the group by the dragons whose ancestors Ikaku Senin had imprisoned in a cave to stop the rain from being created, or something like that. The point is that Ikaku did something in his past life that warranted Ryo-Wo's wrath. The humans and summons brought up some sort of defense like Gamabunta's giant water wall and Mukadetashu's earth wall. Ikaku formed a dome of energy around them. Mikio shot out a chakra shield. Jiraiya added onto the water wall. Offense met defense, and the defending ones had to push with all their might. They had to make sure that none of the attacks passed through the defenses lest others get through as well. The four humans, after realizing that they did not have enough power to sustain the defenses for much longer, decided to stop their efforts and leave the defending to the summons and Ikaku's self-sustaining dome of energy. Then they thought up a plan that would get them out of the mess they were in without having to S one of their own. Haru was the one to think of the best idea of them all, which they planned to immediately implement, if only Jiraiya, Mikio, and Haru could convince Ikaku to cooperate. Haru threw Ikaku out of the dome. When he landed, the Priatich chakra strings controlled how he moved. He walked up to the edge of their side of the canyon. Is that all Ryo-Wo can do? Send his grandchildren to try and get rid of me. I am Ekashringa, and I laugh, at your pitiful attempt to slay me. Come out of Ryuga and face me. Ikaku shouted to the heavens and all that would hear. As soon as the speech was over, the clouds parted and a dragon of innumerable scales descended unto the earth. Its horns and beard were long with age. Its claws glistened in the light provided by the heavens. Its protective scales were white. In one claw it held an orb, in the other a trident. This dragon was at least 40 feet in length. It was a sight to behold. It was as if one of the kami had appeared in the world. Ryo-Wo, the Dragon King, had arrived. Insult me, will you? His voice boomed across the sea of sand. I am Ryo-Wo. And you are a fool. It is an honor to S by my children's children as it was to have SD by the fangs, claws, and magic of my children. You foolish mortal think that you have the power to defeat me. I laugh at you. TCH, you old lizard are all talk. I could K you with my magic should I wish it. But I will not spare you this time. Then you are a greater fool. If you can manage to harm me, I shall let you live for a while longer. But if you are unable to do so, by any means, then you shall forfeit your life to me, and your next 9 reincarnations. Deal. Ikaku shouted, now. After the signal was given, the chakra strings vanished, and the defenses were dropped, and all 4 humans and 2 summons blasted the Dragon King into his grandchildren. Crack. The trident of the Dragon King had cracked due to the combined strength of the attacks on his person. To Ryo-Wo, his weapon was an extension of himself. He was an honest and honorable being. It seems you have tricked my clan once again, he said. I shall let you live, you and your friends. Entertain me while you still breathe, for I shall now help the animated corkscrew with your futures. Then the Dragon King took to the skies to return to his palace under the seas, taking his grandchildren with him, along with the thunderstorm that raged overhead. Gamabunta and Mukadetashu went home as well. Well, Haru said, that wasn't so bad. At least Inari didn't join in the fun. An hour after Haru's statement, the 4 men were running across the desert sand, and atop the sandy dunes. This was not because they found Suna, but because they were being chased by several hundred kitsune. Haru, Mikio and Jiraiya shouted, that's a lot of kitsune. Ikaku and Haru said at the same time after glancing at the horde behind them. And all was right in the world. It had been a week since the kitsune started chasing after the group of 4. They had been avoiding the foxes by running and hiding. While hiding, they rested and ate what food they could get their hands on. Water was easy enough to come by. Just summon a toad to fetch a pail of water. It had been a week since the chase started, and the group was getting tired from all the running and hiding that they had to do. They had to figure out a way to gain the forgiveness of Inari to finally be rid of the kitsune. The question was, how? Face-off time. I got a plan, Jiraiya said as he stopped running and whirled around to face the horde of kitsune. The other 3 stopped running in shock at the proclamation and tripped on their feet and flipped over and skidded to a stop a few feet away from Jiraiya. Then they walked over to him. The Kitsune seemingly skidded to a halt themselves from the abruptness of Jiraiya's actions. Sorero Sennin, what's your plan? Mikio asked. This, he answered, then he dropped down into a kneeling position and shouted, Inari. Kami of rice, deity of agriculture, forgive us for our past actions. The Kitsune horde then parted to allow two figures to pass through. The first one was Dorotobo dragging 3 sacks of rice. The second figure was another old man, this one having a beard that reached his feet, he wore a simple straw hat, and a farmer's garb. Once the 2 old men were in front of Jiraiya, Dorotobo placed 2 of the rice sacks on top of the other, the third one he placed 2 feet behind the piled sacks slightly to the right behind them. He sat on the single sack, while the unknown old man sat on the piled sacks. Why should you be forgiven, Jiraiya-chan? The old man asked. Well, the thought was just that, Jiraiya explained, we never acted on the thought. Plus the situation was really bad. We weren't really thinking straight at the time. Are you truly sorry for thinking such hurtful thoughts? Yes. Very well, he said, I am not Susanoo. Then he waved his right hand, and the Kitsune horde simply vanished. If you will excuse me, Dorotobo said standing up, I have some 100 Kitsune to take care of. So, Jiraiya said looking at the old man, are you some sort of representative of Inari-sama? He said pointing to himself, I am Inari. Gar. The 3 others prostrated themselves before the god. Enough of this, you are forgiven. If you are to repeat your actions of that time, do it when none of the enlightened ones holds your futures in his grasp, Inari said before he too vanished. It took the group of 4 3 days to finally meet up with Kiyomi. But 4 days later, they were separated from her again. The 4 men were sucked into a gale force winds-powered tornado. Hours later all 4 men, somehow still alive, found themselves not with one another. Haru found himself on a chocolate-colored hill. Ikaku found himself up in a tree. Mikio found himself on the bank of a river. Jiraiya found himself on a small island in the middle of a lake. Standing from his position on his back on the ground, Haru looked around to get a feel of his surroundings. Around him were chocolate hills. That was probably the only thing unusual about the place. There were no monsters out to get him, or any people that he could see for that matter. So he decided to take a nap and wait for something to happen. 2 hours later Haru woke up to nothing exciting happening. Hearing his stomach growling, Haru decided to go looking for some grub, be it meat or fruit or vegetable. First thing he needed to do was find some fruit-bearing plants or animals, or any other living thing aside from grass. Who knew that hunting or gathering was so hard, but all his searching finally bore some fruit, almost literally, since Haru found a basket of fruits just there on the ground beside a coconut tree. Instead of climbing the tree to get a coconut, he just got some fruits from the basket and began to munch on them. A short while later some children came running up to him. In their hands were spears, not the playthings that most children would be carrying around with them to play soldier with one another. These things were pointy and were real. So with his basket of fruit Haru ran for the hills. The little people were throwing their spears at Haru, while shouting in a language that he could not understand. For some reason they were mad at him. It couldn't be the basket, could it? So after polishing off the last fruit, Haru tossed the basket at the pursuing mob. Which did not stop them from chasing him. A few seconds of running later an out-of-place big bird passed him by. Beep beep, it said as it passed him by. Some spears passed over Haru's head, some passed underneath his feet as he jumped up to avoid them, some passed between his legs narrowly missing his privates. Some other things like gold and silver were thrown at Haru, which instead of avoiding them Haru caught them. In his rush he almost ran into several coconut trees, but luckily his luck saved him all those times. While running away from certain doom for reasons unknown to him, he saw on the horizon beyond some more chocolate hills another tornado. This one was blazing with fire. Once he was near enough he jumped into it. What's the worst that could happen? He thought. Ikaku found himself up a tree. He was up in one of the higher branches. The tree for some reason was swaying in a non-existent wind. As he looked down he saw the cause for such swaying. There was an old man that was attempting to cut down the tree, but for some reason was not making any progress. Glad for such a thing happening, Ikaku climbed down the tree to confront the woodcutter. Sir, he asked pointing to the tree, why are you cutting down this tree? Oh, hello, so you've been exiled too? Asked the old man. Exiled? Ikaku asked. Exiled. That's why I'm here, the old man replied. I cut down far too many trees, you see. I see. Are we the only two up here? There is a hare and a toad up here with me, he answered. They have yet to aid me in my pursuit of cutting down this tree, but they have been quite a bother. Maybe I can help, Ikaku offered. Splendid. So after some words in gibberish, Ikaku pointed his poleaxe at the saw which the old man used to try and cut down the tree. Oji-san, your saw will keep at it till it falls, Ikaku told the old man. It'll keep at it from now till that tree falls. Many thanks, he said. Might you be a senin? I be, he replied. So where are the hare and toad? I haven't had anything in my belly for a while. Right this way, the old man instructed. Follow me. The old man led Ikaku to the hare and the toad. The hare, upon seeing the hungry look in Ikaku's eyes, jumped into the sky and vanished. The toad looked at Ikaku with pleading eyes. Eyes that did not look normal on the face of a toad. Methinks that toad is not a toad, but another exile like yourself, Ikaku told the old man. Now that I think about it, that toad acts like an oni, though I've never heard of an onigama before. Come here, little one, Ikaku said, coaxing the toad to move closer to him that he might examine it and try to reveal its true form. The toad, after some minutes of coaxing, hopped closer to the two men, and just as it was less than a foot away from the old man, it was grabbed by the old man in a vice-like gs. The old man, after somehow being tormented for years by the toad, was trying to squeeze the life out of it. But it seemed as if there was some outside force keeping it alive, in pain, but still alive. Hey Oji-san, Ikaku said after grabbing the toad from the old man's grasp. It's not an onigama. If it were, you wouldn't be able to squeeze it to death anyway, you'd be right now. After allowing his brain to process the logic behind Ikaku's thinking, the old man told him that he would be returning to his tree to wait for it finally be cut down, leaving Ikaku alone with the toad. So little toad, what are you? He asked the toad, not expecting an answer. Are you an onigama that does not want to harm others? The toad shook its little head. Are you another animal? The toad shook its little head. Are you a spirit? The toad shook its head. Are you some kind of exiled being? The toad shook its head. Then what are you? He thought out loud. Well, do you want to return to what you once were? The toad bobbed its head up and down. Ikaku then saw a swirling tower of fire heading towards him. All right then, he said to the toad, as soon as I find a way to restore you to your true form, I shall. But you must swear on your soul that once I do, you shall grant me 3 wishes. The toad bobbed its head up and down. Nothing could be worse than staying a toad for all eternity. As the tornado was about to mow him down, he threw the toad away from him, then he was sucked into the vortex. Mikio found himself on the bank, lying face down on the bank of a river somewhere. Standing in front of him was a shinobi dressed in an all-black garb. He had a black scarf around his a mask covering the lower half of his face, and a tattoo on his forehead. As Mikio started to stir, the shinobi reached down to help him up and helped him walk to the house nearby. Mikio limped into the house and was slowly lowered down to the ground. The shinobi then got a glass of water and had Mikio drink it. What were you doing in the river, my friend? The shinobi asked. I don't know, last thing I remember was being sucked up into a tornado. What's that? It's a swirling tower of usually wind. Have you not encountered one yet? I have not, the shinobi admitted. Where do you live? Maybe I can help you get home. I can't remember where I live, Mikio said, but before I got here I was traveling with some friends in search of my memory. You too have lost your memory? The shinobi asked, astonished. Indeed I have, friend, indeed I have. Where were you last with them? Outside Sunagakure no Sato in Kase no Kuni. Do you know how to get there? I'm sorry, friend, but I have not heard of such a place. You have been blown far from your homeland, it seems. Yes, it seems so, Mikio said, sounding slightly defeated. Well, since you'll be staying with me for an indefinite time, you might as well help me around the house, as well as defend the house. I'm Mikio, by the way, a shinobi. People call me Karasu. I too am a shinobi. Maybe I can help you with missions. Maybe. Something tells me I can trust you. Thank you. Mikio helped Karasu with some of the missions they newly instated local lords had been sending them. Apparently Karasu's clan still existed, but he was banished for past actions against the clan, leaving him as a clanless ninja. So Mikio adopted him as his little brother. They then named themselves the Rosuto brothers. The decision for their moniker was a little scroll among Mikio's sealed belongings. It was a scroll of acceptance into the Rosuto clan. The undersigned name was Rosuto Juashu. The leader and founder of Rosuto no Kuni apparently knew of Mikio's plight and decided to give him a more solid identity. He was Rosuto Mikio, and his brother was Rosuto Karasu, their honorary brothers being Myoboku Jiraiya, Ikaku Senin, and Asahi Haru. The brothers had been asked to do several missions that involved assassinations, capings, thieveries, robberies, stalling, transport, hunting, reconnaissance, and some other ones that Karasu had never had to do during the Civil War, like grocery shopping, weeding gardens, catching lost pets. The brothers had to defend their hideout with their retainers, these men being deserters of their factions in the previous war, plus 2 Yojimbo. The brothers had 8 retainers all in all. Mikio granted them the clan name Okugi. The invaders of their forest home were mostly barbarians that tried to steal from them. Sometimes the invaders or trespassers were ninja from other clans who had grudges against Karasu. With the help of Mikio and some training in more advanced jutsu, the Rosuto 10th family, as Mikio decided to call themselves, became quite a formidable force. Mikio had been with Karasu for more than 2 years, yet he did not give up the hope that he would someday be reunited with his friends. Karasu knew that that day would come, so the brothers made a pact: should they ever part, they would find each other again. One day there was a mission request sent to the brothers. It requested the Rosuto 10th branch to travel to an abandoned castle and find out what the mysterious lights that some passing soldiers had seen coming from the place. That day it was the only mission request that was sent to them. The pay was great, it was almost too good to be true, but their honor and trust with the clan of the client forced them to accept the mission. The 10 members of the Rosuto 10th, as they were referred to as, reached the castle in record time. The abandoned castle was never retaken due to tens of failed attempts. Something always happened to the people that occupied the castle. They were always forced to leave the premises for always unexplained reasons. It was found on the plateau of a medium-sized mountain. It overlooked a small lake, and was surrounded by a forest. The castle walls were built to look like a 5-pointed star, that is if one were to look at it from the skies. There was a second wall, an outer wall that circled the inner wall, but touched all the points of the star. All in all, the 2 walls made were built to look like a pentagram. At each point of the star-shaped wall there was a 3-story tower. There were several buildings lying around, most of them houses, shrines, and small warehouses. The castle was actually a castle town. There was only one gate in and out of the castle town. There were 3 levels in the castle town, or 3 tiers with stairs leading to the next one. Right smack dab in the middle of the 3rd level was the 7-story castle keep. The mysterious lights that the passing soldiers had seen were coming from the top floor of the castle keep. Around the perimeter of the town there was a moat with only one bridge. Putting on a small rebreather mask, Mikio dunked his head into the moat and saw lots and lots of bamboo spikes covering the moat bed, which he informed his companions of. So the 10 men cautiously crossed the bridge. Once they were in front of the gate, the 10 men split into pair to investigate the town grounds. Unlike most castle towns, this one had its walls surround the town and not just the castle. The 2 Yojimbo moved off together, the 2 former Aikiho samurai went off together, the 2 former priests went off to examine the shrines that littered the town, the 2 former Akame swordsmen cautiously moved in the direction of the castle keep, and the Rosuto brothers threw the grappling hooks at the wall and pulled themselves up on it. The brothers treated the mission just like any other. They made use of all the tricks they knew not to be spotted. They blended in with the shadows and moved where moonlight was not present whenever possible. They moved through the 2nd level of the town, spotting no one and nothing of interest, although Karasu would on occasion stop to pick up mushroom and other small things. The 1st level was where the actual town was found, the 2nd level housing the military-related things, while the 3rd level held the keep. As the duo made their way to the nearest wall that led upwards, they realized that the town was just too quiet, but they did not have the luxury of time to wonder about that, so they used the grappling hooks to once again pull themselves up the wall. As they landed on the 3rd level in full view of the keep, they noticed that there were absolutely no signs that anyone had been near the keep in decades. Nothing was out of place, there was absolutely nothing to betray the emptiness of the castle town. There were no remnants of past occupations, there were no insects, no crickets, nothing. The sky only held the moon with no stars accompanying it, but they remembered that when they were traveling to the castle there were stars in the sky. Now there was only the moon and some thin clouds. Against their better judgment, the brothers decided to split up. Karasu would enter through the main doors, while Mikio would scale the outside of the keep. They would later meet up on the top floor. The two former priests were going through all the shrines of the town that they could find. All that they found in or near the shrines were some paw prints belonging to a menagerie of animals. They had seen the prints of Kuma, Usagi, Kitsunes, Inu, Okami, Aoshi, and others. This caused them to hold their katanas in front of them as they moved. They suspiciously watched the shadows in case these creatures decided to spring out and ambush them. The two samurai were searching for clues and the like on the second level. They were currently in an armory filled to the brim with weapons and armor, but there was something out of place in an abandoned place. There were footsteps outside the armory. The footsteps sounded like people running. The two samurai decided to investigate the unusual occurrence. One of them peeked outside through a crack in the door. They still heard the footsteps, but they saw no one running. So they slowly crept out, eyes alert and prepared for anything. The two swordsmen were walking around the grounds around the keep on the third level. They were following some footprints in the dirt, footprints that belonged to what appeared to be a big man, or a bear wearing boots or shoes or slippers. The former priests found themselves backed up in a corner, the only thing between them and the predators before them were their katanas. There were bears, wolves, and tigers in front of them. They were growling and slowly moving in on what looked like an easy K and a free meal. As one, the beasts pounced only to meet 4 katanas. The Yojimbo duo had spotted the two former priests being cornered by the beasts and had rushed to their aid, and subsequently jumped in just in time. The 4 combatants used their unoccupied hand to punch the beasts, their feet and legs to kick at them, and their ever-handy swords to cut, slash and S at the beasts until the things were finally S at their feet. But before they could relax, they heard clashes of steel against steel. They used what ninja training they had to jump from the first level to the second to search for the source of the metal clashing. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.